Hello listeners and senders of Daetro Nightmares. It's been 4 weeks since our last long story upload. This is because of me trying to create a gaming channel while being the sole voice actor and editor for the channel. We have just reached 14,000 subscribers as I was recording this video. The audio quality of this narration should be twice better or more than our previous videos, thanks to an AI software that automatically enhances voices into podcast version. This should give you a better experience moving forward. And lastly, before we start, I would like to give a shout out to Milkin Anime, Unicron, and Boy Yitz for being the top commenter in the channel. Thank you so much for the support. Let us begin.
Hi Day, it's John. Shout out to all the subscribers of Daetro Nightmares. I originally wrote this story in my native language, so I hope the translation in English is accurate. I changed the names in the story to avoid any issues, but everything I've shared is true. I used to work at McDonald's, one of the most popular fast food chains in the world. I had experienced mild hunting several times before, such as hearing random voices when no one was around. But this was the first time I encountered a full-body apparition. It was a typical night shift, and I was working at the counter. The restaurant was busy, and there were many customers coming in and out. As I was taking orders and handling the cash register, a 67-year-old woman named Mary entered the restaurant. I knew her name and age because she presented her senior citizen ID and asked for a discount. She had trouble deciding on her order, and while she was deciding, I noticed the man behind her. I couldn't remember his face or if he even had one, but it was a tall man wearing outdated clothes who was standing a little too close to Mary, so I assumed he was with her. Mary finally chose her meal, a single order, and I told her the total. After she paid, I began preparing her food. Once it was ready, she took the food and sat at a nearby table. As I was serving the next customer, I noticed that the strange man was still standing behind Mary while she ate. He seemed to be acting as her bodyguard. Despite my efforts to ignore them, I found myself getting increasingly distracted by Mary and the man. It was impossible to miss a tall, oddly dressed man standing so close to an elderly woman who was eating her meal. Eventually, Mary finished eating and stood up to leave. The man followed her out the door, and I felt a sense of relief. But what happened next was emotionally overwhelming. As Mary began crossing the street, I saw her get hit by a car through the restaurant's glass walls. Several people rushed to her aid, and I asked a co-worker to call for help as I ran outside to try and administer first aid. As I approached Mary, I saw something that left me confused and disoriented. Her soul separated from her body and walked away with the man, slowly vanishing into thin air. When I returned to the store, my colleague informed me that the ambulance had been called and help was on the way, but I knew that Mary was already gone. I kept my experience to myself because I knew no one would believe me if I told them that I witnessed Mary's soul leaving her body and walking away with death after the accident. Hey, it's Raymond. Let me tell you about my experience working at a fast food chain with a famous red bee as its mascot. It was a popular spot for locals to grab a quick meal or hang out with friends. However, there was something unique about this place. It had a resident ghost whom we nicknamed Buddy. At first, we thought it was just our imagination when we noticed things out of place or heard strange noises. But as more of us experienced it, we realized we had a ghostly visitor. However, unlike the stories you hear about scary and malevolent ghosts, Buddy never caused us any harm. In fact, he was quite helpful and would occasionally clean up some of the messes in the store. One of our first encounters with Buddy was when we found a stack of trays neatly piled up in the back room. We knew no one had done it because we were all busy attending to customers, and the stack was too perfect to be an accident. It was then that we started jokingly referring to the ghost as Buddy and greeting him whenever we felt his presence. Over time, we started to notice other strange occurrences, like the soda machine randomly dispensing drinks, or the kitchen equipment turning on and off on its own. Sometimes we would hear laughter or whispers in the empty dining area after closing hours. But none of it felt scary or malicious. It was just Buddy playing around with us. One time, I remember leaving my phone in the break room while I went to take a quick restroom break. When I came back, my phone had disappeared. I searched the break room and even asked my co-workers if they had seen it. But no one knew where it was. I was getting frustrated until I heard a faint ringing sound coming from the back room. I followed the sound and found my phone sitting on a shelf, its screen lighting up as it continued to ring. I picked it up and the ringing stopped immediately. We never felt scared or threatened by Buddy. In fact, we almost looked forward to his pranks and jokes. Whenever something strange happened, we would just laugh and say, "Oh, Buddy's at it again." We even started leaving out a cup of soda for him every night before closing, which would always be empty by the next morning. And although Buddy never revealed himself to us, we felt like he was a part of our team. He may have been a ghost, but he was our buddy nonetheless. And even though I don't work at that fast food store anymore, I'd like to think that Buddy is still there, keeping the current employees on their toes and playing his friendly pranks. All in all, it was a unique and memorable experience, and one that I will always cherish. Good day, Daetro. My name is Aaron, and here's my story. I was working the night shift at KFC as a fry cook, and I had my hands full with constant stream of orders pouring from the drive-thru. To make matters worse, we were short-staffed and tensions were running high. As I worked, I noticed a new employee standing near the fryer. He wore the same uniform as us, but something about him seemed off. He wasn't talking and was completely still, staring blankly at the chicken in the fryer. At first I assumed that he was simply overwhelmed by the chaos of the night and decided to leave him alone. But as the night wore on, strange things began to happen. The TV screen that displayed the orders kept turning off, causing confusion and disorder in the kitchen. Despite the chaos, the new guy remained motionless, still staring at the fryer. Feeling frustrated by his lack of help, I approached him during a lull in orders. "Hey man, are you okay? Why don't you help out with the orders?" However, when I looked back, he was gone. I continued working until the numbers of orders decreased and we were able to take a break. I searched the restaurant and asked my colleagues about the new guy, but nobody knew what I was talking about. I spoke to our supervisor about the incident, trying to report the guy. However, surprisingly, he dismissed it as my imagination getting the best of me, telling me that there wasn't any new employee. I tried to argue and asked that we review the CCTV footage, but as we did, there was no guy standing near the fire. Although I stopped arguing after seeing the CCTV, I am definitely sure of what I saw. I was face to face with the supernatural and worked for several hours while a ghost stood beside me. The clock struck midnight, and everyone in Burger King was rushing to get everything cleaned and tidied up before closing time. Jessie had been working at the restaurant for over a year, but this night was different than any other. As she walked to the back of the kitchen, Jessie noticed something unusual. She saw that the deep fryer was still on, and there was a tray of black whoopers that had not been served. It was strange, as all the orders had been accounted for, and there was no reason for anything to be left out. Jessie began to feel uneasy, and as she turned to leave the kitchen, she saw a shadowy figure out of the corner of her eye. She quickly looked back, but there was no one there. She shrugged it off and continued with her tasks, thinking that it was just her imagination. But as the night went on, the strange occurrences continued. Equipment would suddenly turn on and off, and the sound of footsteps could be heard coming from the empty dining area. Jessie felt like she was being watched, and every time she turned around, there was nothing there. Then, she saw it. The black whoppers that had been left out were no longer in the tray. Instead, they were arranged in a strange pattern on the floor with a message written in ketchup beside them that read, "You are not safe here." Jessie's heart began to race, and she tried to leave, but the doors were locked and she was trapped inside. She searched for her phone, but it was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, she heard a voice behind her. "You should have left when you had the chance." Jessie spun around, but there was no one there. She felt cold fingers wrap around her wrist, and she tried to pull away, but the grip only tightened. Jessie looked down at her wrist and saw that she was holding a black whopper. She felt a sharp pain in her stomach and doubled over, feeling as if something was eating away at her from the inside. She knew what was happening. The curse of the black whopper had claimed her. The restaurant was a portal to the dark and sinister realm, and she had unknowingly opened it by eating the cursed burger. Jessie collapsed on the floor, her body in pain as the curse took hold. She knew there was no escape, and her vision faded. She could hear the voice of shadowy figure laughing in the darkness.